Oh no, oh no, oh, oh. Hi guys, welcome back to our drone channel. With the release of the Mavic 4 Pro, DJI has completely revamped and improved the well-known Waypoint feature. Now with the latest firmware update, these improvements have also been added to the Mini 4 Pro and Air 3S. In this video we focus entirely on the Mini 4 Pro and provide you a full step-by-step guide to the updated Waypoint system. You will learn exactly how it works, what it can actually do and where its limitations are. We will push the function to its limits to find out what you can realistically expect and what might not be possible. So stay tuned, the guide starts right after the intro. And here we go. Boot up the Mini 4 Pro, find the drone in the list, pair it with the controller, check for firmware updates, confirm the correct version, install, be happy. To start the Waypoint feature, tap the small icon in the top left corner, the one with the arrow and the squiggly line. Once you tap it, a pop-up appears in the center of the screen confirming that you've entered Waypoint mode. You also may notice a new menu popping up at the bottom of the screen. Alright, let's take a quick look at this interface. At the top it says press C1 button to add waypoint. There are actually two ways to set a waypoint. One is by pressing the C1 button on the controller. That's this one right here. The other option is to tap the small plus icon on the screen. So let's go ahead and try that out. So we place our first waypoint right at the start. Now we fly it to the next position. You can see that the small thumbnails for each waypoint appear in the menu at the bottom of the screen. When we set the second waypoint, the top section of the screen now shows the total flight time labeled as duration, as well as the distance between the points. That's pretty helpful. It is also important to note that the Mini 4 Pro not only saves the GPS position of each waypoint, but also the orientation, meaning the direction the camera is facing and the current tilt angle of the gimbal. So let us place the remaining waypoints and then return to our starting point. I think the route is already complex enough. But before we start the mission to see how well the Mini 4 Pro can follow the path, there are a few very interesting settings we should take a look at together. Once all waypoints have been set, it is time to configure the flight settings. To do this, tap the three dots on the right-hand side of the screen. A menu will open with several options. First, we see global speed. This controls how fast the Mini 4 Pro will fly along the whole route. At the bottom there is a slider that lets us choose a speed between 0.1 meters per second and 12 meters per second. And of course your choice should also depend on wind and weather conditions. The next setting is called End of Flight. Here you can choose from 4 different options. Hover means the Mini 4 Pro will stay in place after completing the route. Return to home means the drone will fly back to its general home point. But be careful, this is not the starting point of the waypoint route. Land means it will immediately land at the final waypoint. Back to start will send the Mini 4 Pro back to the first defined waypoint in the route. The third option is called On Signal Lost. This defines what the Mini 4 Pro should do if the connection to the remote controller is lost. There are 3 available options. Return to home means the drone will fly back to the designated home point. Hover tells the drone to stay in its current position and wait. Land will make the drone initiate an automatic landing at its current location. The final option is called Start Point. This lets you select which of the waypoints you want to use as the starting point for the mission. Once all settings have been configured, we can either tap the small green Go button to start the mission immediately, or we can tap the left arrow to go back to the previous menu. There we will find a Next button. This takes us to the final flight settings and brings up a large green Go button. Once we tap it, the route will be uploaded and the Mini 4 Pro will begin flying to the first waypoint. The interface at the bottom of the screen changes and now displays useful flight information. We can see how much time has already passed and what the estimated total duration is. To the right of that, we see which waypoint has already been completed. Further to the right, we can track the distance covered so far, as well as the total distance of the mission. At the first few waypoints, we immediately notice a behavior that is important to keep in mind. The drone always tries to follow a smooth path, avoiding any sudden or abrupt movements. Here we can see it veering slightly to the right in order to fly a gentle left turn. Even though it passes through every waypoint, the approach angle does not exactly match the original path we flew when setting the points. You'll see what kind of problem this behavior can cause later in this video. During this current flight, you can also see that the Mini 4 Pro follows the route seamlessly and without any pauses. That's fantastic, but sometimes it might not be exactly what you had in mind. Fortunately, there's a way to fine-tune the behavior to better match your creative intent. We'll take a closer look at that settings menu shortly. In addition to the general route settings, we can also adjust waypoint-specific settings. As soon as we have created our waypoints, we can access these settings by simply tapping on the waypoint we want to edit. This menu is built exactly like the general route settings. On the far left, we see the option Camera Action. Here we can decide whether the Mini 4 Pro should use its camera or not. We can choose between Take Photo to take a still image, Start Rec to start video recording, or Stop Rec to stop an ongoing recording. The next setting is called Altitude. As you might guess, this value shows the altitude at that waypoint. By default, it reflects the height the drone had when the waypoint was set. With a slider below, we can adjust the altitude. The range goes from 0 meters, which makes little sense, up to 500 meters, which is quite dangerous. In most cases, you should not go beyond the 120 meter mark. The next option is speed. How fast should the drone fly at this waypoint? By default, we see global speed. This is the value that was set for the entire route. However, you can change it using the small checkbox in the lower left corner. If we select it, a slider appears, allowing us to set the speed manually. Values between 0.1 and 12 meters per second are possible. Again, the actual flight speed also depends on wind and weather conditions. Next comes heading. This refers to the horizontal orientation of the Mini 4 Pro. There's a slider at the bottom allowing full rotation from -180 to +180 degrees. In the lower left corner, we again find a bottom. When we tap it, several options appear. Follow the course means the drone will fly with an orientation that matches the flight direction between the waypoints. Manual means the Mini 4 Pro will orient itself between waypoints based on a logical heading. POI is currently grayed out, but once you set a point of interest, you can look the drone's orientation onto it. The next setting is Gimbal Tilt. Here we adjust the tilt angle of the gimbal. From -90 degrees straight down up to +60 degrees angled upward. Again, we see the same button in the lower left corner. As before, manual means the gimbal focuses on the direction of the next waypoint. POI is also grayed out here, but as with heading, you can lock the tilt on a point of interest if one is set. If we scroll a little bit to the right, we find Zoom option. We can use the slider to select a digital zoom level between 1 times and 4 times in 0.1 steps. If we select Auto, the zoom level is calculated based on the settings of the previous and next waypoints. This gives you a smooth transition. Well, the final option is Hover. With the slider we define how long the Mini 4 Pro should hover at this point. We can choose between 0 seconds, which means fly straight through, and up to 30 seconds of hover time. This is especially useful for automated video shots where you want to short stop at the specific waypoint. Well, once we have finished setting everything up, a few more buttons become available. Apply to all lets us apply the current settings to all waypoints. Whether that makes sense or not is just up to you. With the small arrows on the left and right, we can quickly jump between waypoints without leaving the menu. That is super useful if you want to make a lot of changes. And finally, the trash icon. What could that mean? Well, exactly, it deletes the selected waypoints from the route. In order to clearly show how everything works, we are going to do a quick test. First, we will fly a simple route and set our waypoints. We begin over an open field, fly straight ahead while slowly gaining altitude and place the second waypoint. Next, we move sideways to the right, continue climbing and focus on the tower. Pay special attention to this moment. This is waypoint 3. Now we turn towards the sunset, keep ascending and move forward to get a better view. That gives us waypoint 4. So far, so good. Now it's time for the settings. We start with waypoint 4. Here I want the Mini 4 Pro to take a photo of the sunset with a digital zoom of 2 to make the sun appear larger in the frame. After that, the drone should not continue immediately, but instead hover for the next 7 seconds. Now to waypoint 3. Here, the Mini 4 Pro should also hover for a few seconds before moving on. We also changed the gimbal tilt to look diagonally downward, meaning the tower should no longer be visible in the shot. To make sure of that, we adjust the heading and rotate the drone slightly to the left into the negative range. Since I am planning a short video clip, I already know that recording should end at this waypoint. Now on to waypoint 1. This is where the video should start recording. So camera action equals start rec. At 3 meters, the flight altitude seems a bit low, so I used the slider to increase the altitude to 7 meters. Just to be on the safe side. Finally, we go into the flight settings. Please note, I am keeping the flight speed at 2.5 meters per second, and once the route is finished, the drone should return to home. And off we go. Start altitude 7 meters. Perfect. Video recording started automatically, just as planned. Let us check the speed. The Mini 4 Pro is consistently flying at 2.5 meters per second, so looks good. I will fast forward the video a little bit. Waypoint 2 reached. Excellent. Now remember, we changed both gimbal tilt and heading, so the tower which was originally in the frame should now be out of view. We reach waypoint 3 and everything works exactly as configured. The camera is pointing at the field, video recording stops and the drone hovers for a few seconds before moving on. A moment later it continues. The digital zoom is applied smoothly, the drone adjusts its heading and faces the sunset. We reach waypoint 4 and with a zoom factor of 2, a photo is taken. After that, the Mini 4 Pro hovers in place for a few more seconds. The route is complete. The final instruction was to return to home, and that is exactly what the drone does. It flies back to the starting point. So all settings were executed successfully. So now let us take a quick look at some potential problems. In the first example, I'm testing a waypoint route flown at low altitude with relatively large distances between waypoints. You can see that I'm following a dirt path at around 2.5 meters above the ground. It is important to note that the terrain rises slightly in the direction of flight. After placing the second waypoint, I make a sharp right turn and continue flying low across the field. Again, I maintain an altitude of around 1.5 to 2 meters until I place the third waypoint. To understand the issue, we do not need to place any more waypoints. Let us jump straight into the automated mission. There were no special waypoint settings applied, only the maximum flight speed was set to 6.5 meters per second. So at first you can clearly see the Mini 4 Pro drifting slightly to the left, which is totally normal as it tries to execute a smooth right turn toward the field. So far so good, the altitude seems consistent with how the waypoints were originally placed. Then the drone turns right and begins flying across the field. But here's where the problem becomes obvious. The drone does not gain any additional altitude. Instead, it continues flying at around 4 meters measured from the starting point. Since the terrain is rising, this leads directly towards a collision which I was only able to prevent by manually taking over. So what caused the problem? Hard to say for sure, but I suspect it was the long distance between waypoints combined with the low altitude flying and changing terrain. The takeaway here, setting a minimum altitude of 6 to 10 meters is definitely a smart idea in most situations. Okay, here's another example of low altitude waypoints with larger distances between them. This time I fly diagonally backward with the terrain once again gently rising. After about 120 meters I set the second waypoint at an altitude of around 4 meters. Again, no special settings were applied. Let us see how the Mini 4 Pro handles this situation. The drone starts flying backward just as planned. However, we can clearly see that there is no altitude adjustment at all. This time I let the obstacle sensors do their job and the drone successfully prevented the collision on its own. Still, the outcome is far from ideal. And now on a really demanding test. The goal is to guide the Mini 4 Pro through a narrow corridor of trees, branches and bushes, without any collision. If the waypoints and GPS performs as accurately as promised, this should not be a problem. Let us fly the route. Right after the first left turn, we avoid some bushes on the right side, then steer back into line. Next we go under a tree, followed by a slight correction to the right to dodge more bushes. Then we head straight through some dense shrubbery. This part could be tricky, since there are obstacles on both sides. Let us see how it goes. Finally we exit onto an open field, gain some altitude and focus the camera on the TV tower. And here we go, starting the flight. I will speed things up a bit here, since I set the flight speed quite low. As we can see, the drone's flying directly from waypoint to waypoint rather than following the path of the trail. The altitude is definitely high enough to clear the grass without any issues. However, the drone maintains that same height, even when it would make sense to adjust slightly downward. And what happens next? You can probably guess it. A collision with the branches and a crash from about 3 meters. That is something no one wants. In most cases, this kind of impact will leave you with a damaged drone. Luckily, the Mini 4 Pro came out of it unharmed. No damage. I was lucky this time. The issue here was clearly the distance between the waypoints. So it is time to try again with a better setup. Alright, let's try this again. This time with a smarter approach. For the second attempt I place more waypoints, especially around the critical sections of the route. Each curve, each tight spot now has its own waypoint. And I keep the low flight speed to give the Mini 4 Pro the time to react. The altitude is now set more precisely as well, high enough to avoid grass but low enough to stay clear of branches and tree covers. Let us see how it performs now. The drone starts the mission and handles the first curves much more accurately. Thanks to its extra waypoint, it follows the intended path much better, staying close to the trail and avoiding the bushes on the right. It flies smoothly under the tree and makes a clean correction to the right. Even the tricky path through dense bushes is no longer a problem. The tighter waypoint spacing really helps here. And finally, out onto the open field, climbing smoothly with the TV tower locked in the center of the frame. That is how it should work.
Alright folks, got a bit windy, so sounds not too good, but that's it for today. What do you think about the new waypoint improvements? Pretty cool or just meh? Those crashes and near misses definitely showed there's still room for improvement. So luckily nothing got damaged. Overall though, I think the updates are pretty solid and kinda useful. If you enjoyed the video, give a thumbs up and leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. So see you in the next video. Bye bye.